to identify one or two shipbuilders in Nigeria, and then they provide funds and come bring the technology that we require to develop it. It's still at the infancy stage, but we are still working on that. So this conference is well timed. I think it's an opportunity for the European partners to come, identify where they can partner with Nigerian companies, and then should be able to move forward. Thank you very much.
Presentation on New Massa and its role and its plan in building partnerships, and comments about career paths for training and the broad range of skills that are needed to help the Nigerian maritime sector move forward. Now, our next speaker, talking about offshore personnel training, is by Austin Zariki, who's the Managing Director of BW Offshore Nigeria, so certainly a man with a lot of knowledge of the sector, and he's also the Treasurer of MAN, Oron Alumni, so we're very much looking forward to your presentation.
Good morning. My name is Austin Zariki. I work for BW Offshore. BW Offshore is a global player in the oil and gas industry. It's part of the BW Group. We have a presence in all the continents in the world, providing FPSOs for oil companies. We have 2 FPSOs in Nigeria and about 5 others in West Africa. We've been in Nigeria for the past 15 years. The topic I want to talk about today is offshore personnel training. It might seem a slight digression from the topic of maritime seafaring career. By the way, I'm a product of Oron Batch 8, Marine Engineering. I chose to talk about this topic because it's very passionate for me. I started my career as a seaman. Today I'm in the oil and gas industry. I've been there for the past 10 to 12 years. So the purpose of choosing this topic is to highlight the opportunities that exist in the Nigerian oil and gas industry for oil graduates. It's not always that we get the opportunities to go to sea, especially with the problems we've had with the shipping industry in Nigeria. So it is a good opportunity to explore what other career options are available in the offshore oil and gas industry. So the topic, the outline is, I'm going to talk about who's an offshore personnel, and then talk about what are the career opportunities for offshore personnel in the Nigerian oil and gas industry. Training and certification requirements to work offshore. The training bodies, facilities, and institutions that provide these various trainings. Looking at challenges in competency development, then we can draw some conclusions. By the way, this presentation is more of a teleprompt for me to be able to talk about what goes on. So it might not be as academic or as detailed as some other presentations that you have seen, just maybe to talk about experience in the industry. So who is an offshore personnel? A lot of people might have different definitions or different ways of looking at who is an offshore personnel. This is not an academic definition. It's more like to highlight from the industry perspective who is considered an offshore personnel. So basically, anybody who works in the industry, the drilling companies, seismic acquisition companies, and processing, like FPSOs or production platforms, storage, FSOs and FSUs, transportation, pipelines, handling or otherwise involved in the production of hydrocarbons in an offshore environment. Keyword here is an offshore environment. And also to go and carry out some maintenance on some equipment offshore, you might not be considered an offshore personnel. So it's mainly that you earn your income offshore. It may be working on a platform, it may be working as a diver, it may be working as an OSP operator. As long as you work offshore on a rotational basis, sometimes typically it's 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off, 4 weeks on, 4 weeks off, 6 weeks, 6 weeks on, 6 weeks off, then you're considered to be an offshore personnel. So there are various career paths and opportunities for offshore personnel in the oil and gas industry, as well as in many other industry sectors. In a typical oil platform, or I can take, for example, an FPSO that I'm very much familiar with, we have different departments and various career opportunities for various categories of personnel. You can start from production because purely, mainly the whole activity of being offshore is to produce oil. So the client always wants to make sure that we lay a lot of emphasis on the production of oil. So we start with the production department or process department. We have production supervisors, superintendents, control room TCS operators. And these are the guys that actually make sure that the oil is processed and stored and eventually offloaded. And you have the maintenance department, which is typically the department you have find this mostly on the ships, the engine room of the FPSO or the platform. Here you have typically in the ship you call them the marine engineers or the engineers, the shipping engineers. You have maintenance supervisors and attendants. They have multi-main mechanic keepers, utility operators, welders, electrical and instrumentation technicians, and supervisors. They have materials coordinators and storekeepers. These are career paths that a typical marine engineer from whose friend or can actually pursue if he doesn't want to go to sea as an option. And then the typical marine department on the platform or on FPSO mainly on the rig. We have marine superintendents, supervisors, cargo operators who handle the cargo for offloading and storage. Same kind of activities we do on a regular tanker, ballasting as well. They have the divers, the ROV operators, VP operators, boat operated vehicles, and dynamic positioning operators. They have mooring masters who ensure that the object tankers come in and safely offload the crude produced to the refinery for processing. Then the part that I like to call the administration department is more like the management of the facility. You have the offshore installation manager. Typically, most facilities, especially when there are FPSO kind conversions, the offshore installation managers are usually with marine background because sometimes he needs to make sure that they have enough marine experience to be able to administer the other marine functions within the unit, especially when it comes to cargo handling. But of course, it's not limited to only marine personnel. So ship engineers, production operators can end up becoming offshore installation managers. And of course, you have the safety and HSE officers, the basic doctors, document controllers, and radio operators. I'm going to drill this because that's another aspect of offshore personnel career path that perhaps most people from the Oron, who graduate Oron, I think is not suitable for them, or they do not have the competency or the prerequisites to pursue careers in that path. But it's actually possible to pursue paths, career paths in drilling. You start from derrickman, floorman, roastabout, drilling superintendents, and then of course work your way up to rig manager, tool pusher, who are of course like the OIMs on the production platforms, so FPSO. So, why additional training to work offshore? Because probably say yes, you have gone through already, you've done your mandatories, you've gotten all your certifications in place. So why do I need to have additional training to work offshore? The nature of operating environment is most times different from the shipping, traditional shipping environment. You're working with a lot of hazardous chemicals, you're working in an environment that is very challenging. You have production activities going on. Sometimes you have drilling activities going on, so sometimes you have offloading activities going on. So there are lots of people who are involved in production platform at any point in time. And it is well known globally that the oil and gas industry does not take safety for granted, and so enforcement of safety requirements is much more stricter than, I could say, in the marine industry. We've had a few cases recently, the Macondo disaster, the Gulf of Mexico. This highlights the danger in working in the oil and gas industry at the hazard space, and that's why there's a lot more emphasis on safety training. And of course, it also has a different work environment. The traditional shipping industry, the ship goes to the ports, loads the cargo, maybe it's the crude oil or containers, and sails away and gets to the next port and discharges it and goes back again. But here, and most times, the cargo owner is not present on board. So, but on the production platform, that's completely different, because you do have the owner of the oil there, company man, always there. So they are very much involved in the activities that you do offshore and participate in decision making sometimes. So it's a different kind of work culture. There's a lot of reporting, a lot of documentation. I know that traditionally most sea personnel do not like a lot of documentation and paper signing and all that. It takes too much time, wastes a lot of time. So, but offshore you have to do your safety rounds, you have to do your the daily meetings in the mornings, in the afternoons, in the evenings. You have to do your permit to work meetings, you have to do your risk assessments, you have to carry out all these functions. And together with the owner of the platform or the oil that you're working on. And that makes it even much more different from the traditional work environment on the ship. Like I said earlier, there are always, most times, simultaneous operations going on, and that requires good interface management, cooperation and coordination between the different departments, which in most cases are not readily, not common within the traditional seagoing vessel. So, there are I'm just trying to limit it to just about 2 training requirements that you need to have before you can begin to work in the offshore oil and gas industry. One of them is the mandatory training. Now, recently, IFIA has made it mandatory that before you can go offshore, whether as a visitor, as a worker, or even as a VIP, you have to have offshore safety permits. And for you to obtain the offshore safety permit, you have to go through BOSIET, Basic Offshore Safety Induction Emergency Training, or the tropical version of that. Now it is accepted that if you have STC 95, which covers your survival trainings, and then you have HUET, helicopter underwater escape training, then you are qualified to be able to get offshore safety permit. So it's accepted as a replacement for BOSIET. Then you have to have medical certificate, fitness certificate. The other training is the training I would like to call the career advancement trainings. Now, typically you pass through your 2 years or 4 years in HND training in Oron, and there's no ship available for you to go and do your sea training, to pursue your sea career. It is also good to pursue other aspects of trying to gain knowledge and education in the oil and gas industry. So there are specialized tailored technical and non-technical courses that are run by different institutions. And the purpose of these trainings are to give you an appreciation and understanding of oil and gas industry practices. I talked about the hazardous environment, the emphasis on safety, and and all the activities that goes on that you need to work together as a team, as for the different cultural issues as well. So a lot of these courses help you to understand the culture and environment of offshore life. A lot of these courses are now available through e-learning. Opito's Virtual Open Learning is a typical example where you can register online and you do the courses, different modules, you complete it, and then you have a certificate to be able to work in the oil and gas industry. And then of course you can participate in internships, which I'll talk a little bit more later, or on-the-job trainings. Now, the typical courses in the career advancement part is there are introduction to production operations. Like I explained earlier, you have the production operators that process the oil, separation, storage. These are courses that give you an overview of the background on the production operations on a typical oil platform. Another example is HVAC, technician training, quality QC training, digital control system operator training, ROV or DG simulator training, spread operation, materials procurement management. You also have specialist courses like going to specific equipment manufacturers to gain knowledge of gas turbine operation and maintenance, gas compressor operation and maintenance. Production optimization technologies are available. And you can also take courses on crude oil custody transfer, because at the end of the day, after producing the oil, you have to export it, you have to evacuate it. And knowing how to run and manage the facilities, the metering systems, this course provides such trainings. And of course, you have HLO trainings and crude oil laboratory trainings. Now, these are not typical courses that take you 6 months or two months. These are short courses. Some of them last from between 2 weeks, some are 5 weeks, depending on the institution that's provided these courses. So these are courses that can enhance your ability to work in the oil and gas industry, in addition to your qualification you've gained from the Maritime Academy. So, example of career advancement trainings, various certification bodies and institutions provide these courses. Some of them have, some of them are local, some of them are international, and some of these courses are provided by experienced industry consultants, people who have worked in the industry for many years. For example, Shell, Mobil, Chevron, a lot of industry consultants who just left the company and set up their own consultancy outfits. They provide tailor-made courses to provide the required knowledge for those who choose to pursue careers in the oil and gas industry, different levels and different categories. Now, these training institutions, it's important for them to be accredited by recognized international bodies like Opito. It's also good if they have affiliations with other institutions, universities, or other higher learning establishments. And then, like I said earlier, there are opportunities for e-learning options, because these days they are becoming very, very popular. You can choose to do some of these courses online by some universities that provide courses. So for the mandatory trainings, they have to be done by DPR, approved an internationally recognized accreditation. And the following bodies, Opito, ICOA, OLF for the Norwegian maritime sector, and then of course the IMO STC 95, STCW 95 is recognized for the issuance of these mandatory trainings. And then medical certification needs to be according to UK OOA and the OLF. So it doesn't mean that you can go to any doctor and get certification for your medical health. That's not acceptable. DPR will not permit that, and you will not use that to be able to get the offshore safety permit. So, challenges in competency development in Nigeria for the offshore personnel coordinator. Inadequacy of industry-focused trainings and competency development initiatives. And this is very true because even though I said earlier that there are a lot of consultants that have set up shops to provide trainings, but a lot of them are not well equipped. A lot of them do not have the necessary facilities to be able to provide the level of and standard and quality of training that is required to effectively equip the participants for these trainings. Poorly equipped training facilities, like I said, there are very few of them that have simulators to be able to provide the trainings that are required. And of course, since a lot of the equipment manufacturers are not based in Nigeria, it's very rare that you're able to undertake some of these courses locally. Now, limited opportunities for internship and on-the-job training. This is very important because you go to school, you get your certificate, you come out, well, it doesn't really give you the required training or experience that you need to be able to go in and do the job. So most times it's very important to be able to give students internship opportunities in companies to be able to serve and work and learn firsthand on the job that they are required to do. So most times it's very difficult. But recently, the Nigerian Oil and Gas Content Monitoring Board has made it necessary for some of these issues to be addressed. Part of their recent requirement is that when you're bidding for new projects, you have to demonstrate your local content capacity and local content percentage achievement. And part of their requirement is to nominate a certain number of personnel to undergo training in the project. So if you are, for example, bidding to integrate a new FPSO in Nigeria or wherever, NCDND will require you to nominate at least 10% of your man-hours dedicated on that project to training. And this training is not training of your own personnel that's going to be working for you. These are training they are going to nominate personnel and then hand them over to you, you train them, and then they go back into the community to provide, to work, to look for job opportunities elsewhere. So I think that's a fantastic initiative that has been initiated by the Nigerian Content Development Monitoring Board. High cost of training. The oil and gas industry is not very cheap. It's a very expensive industry. To be able to go for some of these courses is very, very expensive. For example, to obtain the offshore safety permit, you have to go through the BOSIET or Tropical BOSIET or HEWET. All in all, at the end of the day, you may end up spending close to about $3,000 to be able to obtain that. And that's something that's not cheap for someone who's just wanting to go into the industry because doesn't really have the money to do that. Because even if the courses are, you do it online, you still need to be able to pay for it because they're not cheap. Inadequate implementation of monitoring and regulatory guidelines. This is very important because the government churns out loads and loads of regulations, but sometimes these regulations are not adequately monitored or implemented, and sometimes there are a lot of contradictions. For example, the cabotage law implementation and how it affects the oil and gas industry. Since the cabotage law came into being, the oil and gas industry has always tried to ensure that the FPSOs are not included in the cabotage. Different parties have different opinions on this. But because of that, it's difficult for the operators of the FPSOs to actually know whether the requirements of cabotage law is required to be implemented on the operation of FPSOs in terms of manpower, in terms of locally built, in terms of also local ownership. So these are some of the challenges. And then another challenge is in terms of expatriate quota, because Nigeria has this law that we have to have a certain number of expatriate quota, and you cannot bring in an expert to take on a job that can normally be taken on by a Nigerian. And this is not properly implemented because the system is not able to properly enforce it and implement it. So there are a lot of things that need to be done with regards to the monitoring and compliance and implementation of the existing regulatory frameworks that would make it easy for the industry to develop the competencies required to adequately support the industry. Then, of course, there's the attitude issue with regards to certification. Most people prefer to have a certificate. They just want to have a certificate that they've done this course, just to build up the CV. But most times they actually forget about the actual purpose of the certificate. They rather would want to have a certificate, but the quality of education, the quality of training that goes with the certificate are most times often lacking. And that creates a problem when in the work environment you have somebody that has the right certificate or claims to have the right certificate, but when it comes to